Hey everybody, welcome to another devotional. I'm so glad you're joining us this week. Tell you what I want to do. I want to look at some topics that I think are really important in our lives. I know they are in my life. And I want to begin, and maybe we'll do 2 or 3 days on the subject of forgiveness. Now, I don't know about you, but that is a big, big deal in my life because I know I need to be forgiven. And I know I also need to forgive other people. And I'll tell you right now, it's a lot easier for me to receive forgiveness than it is to give forgiveness. How about you? So let's start by looking at a passage in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. Let me read it to you. This will lay the groundwork for our discussion about forgiveness over the next few days. Paul writes, "Be kind and compassionate." I love those words, kind, compassionate. "To one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." So what Paul is saying there is, hey, listen, I need you to be kind and compassionate to one another. And boy, we really need that message in our country today. I mean, we desperately need heavy doses of kindness and compassion to one another. We are so fractured right now. We need forgiveness. And so Paul says, that's how I want you to relate to each other. And then he says, and I need you to forgive each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. In other words, the motivation for me to forgive you and you to forgive me is the fact that both of us have been forgiven by God. And so, because we've been forgiven, we can go out and forgive other people. Now, I want to repeat, it's easy for me to receive forgiveness. It's harder at times for me to give forgiveness to other people. I read a quote years ago that has stuck with me, and I wanted to share it with you right now. Somebody said, forgiveness has the power to make dead relationships come to life again. Now think about that for just a moment. Forgiveness in a relationship is so powerful that it can even bring back to life relationships that have died. So, can I ask you, do you have any relationships in your life that are dead? Or maybe on the way to death. They're dying right now. They're in bad shape. I want to tell you, and this is not just kind of preacher talk. This is the truth. Forgiveness, God's forgiveness, that He can give to other people through you and me, God's forgiveness can bring a dead relationship back to life. So if you have a Bible, turn to Matthew chapter 18, and in the next few moments that we have left today, I want to talk a little bit about part of a story that Jesus tells the disciples. Matthew chapter 18, beginning at verse 21. It says, "Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, 'Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times?' And Jesus answered, 'I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. All right. Now, I want to stop here and just say a word. Peter asked this question, how many times do I have to forgive? Why do you think he asked Jesus that question? Now, I don't know for sure, and I doubt that you do either. But my guess is, if he's like me at all, he was trying to find out, when do I have to not, or when can I not forgive somebody? In other words, what are the boundaries? What are the goalposts here? And when is it possible for me to say, okay, enough? I don't have to forgive you anymore. Now, that's my take. And he says 7 times. Do I forgive somebody up to 7 times? You see, what you and I need to know in order to appreciate what Peter was saying, and then Jesus' answer to Peter, is that the rabbis of that day said, you have to forgive a person 3 times. But after that, you don't have to forgive a person. You're in good shape if you forgive someone 3 times. Man, I am glad we don't live under those rules, or I'd be in trouble with my wife. So, Peter says, hey, I'll double that and add 1 for good measure. In other words, he was saying, Lord, I really want to get with it and be forgiving, and I'll do it 7 times. Is that enough? And then Jesus says, and it's staggering, no, you forgive 77 times. And some translations say 70 times 7. The point that Jesus is making is there's never an end to our forgiveness. Now, don't let anybody tell you that forgiving is easy. It's a lot easier for me to receive forgiveness. How about you? I mean, when I've done wrong and I need forgiveness, it's pretty easy for me to accept it when somebody gives it to me. But when I'm asked to forgive other people, particularly when it's been a really hurtful thing done to me, then it's hard. It's really hard. So Jesus doesn't stop there. He tells this story, and I'm not going to read all of the story if you're still open to Matthew chapter 18, but I'm going to read a few verses and we'll make a few comments and we'll pick it up tomorrow, okay? So Jesus said, I tell you not 7 times, but 77 times. And then beginning at verse 23, therefore the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all he had be sold to repay the debt. Now watch what happens. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. How could he do that? How could he pay it back? Let me tell you, the truth is there was no way he would ever be able to pay that debt back. But he was a desperate man. He was going to lose everything, including his wife and his family. Everything. And so he begged the master, be patient with me. Verse 27 says, the master, and this is a huge verse, took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. Now, we'll pick that story up tomorrow, but I want to talk a little bit about what we see in the story at this juncture. You know, I think initially forgiveness seems unfair. And you want to know why? Because at the core, it really isn't about fairness. We live in a world, and I'm right in the middle of this. It's not fair. We hear that all the time. It must be fair. Life. You and I know this deep down inside. Life is not fair. And forgiveness is not fair. When this master forgives this servant, it's not fair. Who gets cheated? Well, the master does. It's not fair because if it were all about being fair, then that servant, his wife, and his children should have been thrown into prison. That's fair. But the fact that the master forgave the debt, oh, well, there's nothing fair about that. We love it because it's so gracious. It's not fair because forgiveness says, you owe, now watch, I'll pay. That's at the heart of forgiveness. When God forgave you and me through Jesus Christ on the cross, what God was saying to you and to me is, you owe, I'll pay by giving my Son. And this is God's brand new plan for dealing with hurt. Fair? Fair says an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You hit me, I hit you. You hurt me, I hurt you. God says, no. The way I want to live and the way I want the people who follow my Son to live is, you hurt me, I forgive you. Well, Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, if somebody strikes you on the cheek, you turn the other cheek to them. Now, we're almost done, but I want to take a time out right now and just say, it's not fair, is it? And in the world we're living in right now, nobody seems to want to listen to that message, but that's the God-honoring message. Forgiveness is difficult. Let's make no illusion otherwise. It's difficult because it's a price tag. It requires a price tag that only you, the forgiver, fully understand. So quickly, let me just tell you what forgiveness is not. And we'll pick this up tomorrow. And I hope you'll stay with me because this is so important in our relationships, in our relationship with God, but our relationship with anyone else. For it to be healthy and God-honoring, we have to learn to forgive. But sometimes I think we misunderstand forgiveness. Forgiveness is not the same thing as excusing. When an action is excusable, it doesn't require forgiveness. And I think a lot of times we have pseudo or fake forgiveness, and that's when we just excuse things. Forgiveness is not necessarily forgetting. You know, as a minister, often I'll have people ask me, hey, have I really forgiven somebody if I haven't forgotten what they did? The only one that I know who can forget perfectly is God. And can I tell you something? I'm not God, and neither are you. You can forgive and not completely forget. Do you want to move toward forgetting? Absolutely. But sometimes it's a long journey, a very long journey. And forgiveness is not the same thing as reconciling. You can forgive somebody, and I'm thinking about marriages. And there can be forgiveness in marriage at times, and that couple doesn't come back together. I'll let you think about that more on your own. But I'm telling you, you can forgive somebody, and that doesn't mean that you come back into a working relationship or the same level of relationship that you had before. Would that be the goal? Absolutely. But you can honestly forgive, and it doesn't end in that kind of reconciliation. All right, I want to pick it up tomorrow. We'll talk more about forgiveness. Have a great day.